Dear viewers, today the topic of our this session is e-contracts, and this pertains to one of the program which is postgraduate certificate in cyber law offered by School of Law IGNOU. When we talk about the certificate in cyber law, it has many courses in it, cyberspace technology and social issues, and one of the courses is regulation of cyberspace. The third course is e-commerce and cyberspace, and the data privacy and protection. So today we will be focusing on e-contracts, which pertains to course MIR 13 of this PGCCL program, which is commerce and cyberspace, where we have discussed various forms of online contracts, what are the features of online contract. So how the contract is formed, that is very important to understand. So when we talk about contracts, how they are emerging, like if we talk about convention system, we always day to day when we visit when we are visiting the market, we are purchasing fruits or we are purchasing vegetables or we are hiring any service. So we are entering into contract in one or the another form. So contracts, we can say they are, it's a common in day to day life. And if we look into the provisions of Indian Contract Act, that governs the contract. It also specifies essential elements of the contract. What are the essential elements, how it is implemented, and what are the provisions which are laid down in the Contract Act, which give the effect to the contract, how the contract is valid, and what are the consequences in case of breaches of contract. Now, but when we talk about the e-contract, it is a contract which is specified, executed, and deployed and modified by a software system. So basically, e-contract is formed formed online. The e-contract have certain challenges also, which maybe it could be a logical implementation, or even in the conceptual framework also we can say there are certain challenges in the e-contracts. If we look into essentials elements of the contract, that is very important, because for the validity of contract, there are certain requirements which have to be fulfilled. Then only we can say that this is a valid contract, because there are certain agreements, but they are not all contracts, but though all contracts are agreements. So there are certain features which form the essential ingredients of a concept of contract. And we will look how this essential elements which is valid for a contract in a physical world is also applicable to the e-contracts which is formed online or in a digital media. Now first is the offer. Now what is offer? How do we define the offer? Now we say it's an act. We can say a person is doing some act, or say I will not do that act. In comes to the other, he is promising the other person that yes, I will do one act or I will abstain from doing that act, but with the consent of that other person on whom the offer is made. So when you are communicating this, that yes, on behalf of you, I am not doing something, I will do something, but the promise is that the other party will act in the similar manner. So he is making a promise, or in an English connotation, we say it's an offer is made, because we generally use the term proposal. If we look into the Contract Act, it says what is the proposal. So it says when one person signifies his assent or willingness to do or abstain from doing something with a view to obtain assent, or with the view to obtain the other person's view that he will be abstaining from that act, is called the proposal. So once the proposal is made, this is the concept of simple proposal. Yes, I will do this, you will do that. This is a simple promise and amounts to proposal or an offer under English law, we can say. But in e-contracts, when we talk about online technology, whether there is always an offer when we are looking into the auction sites, or when we are purchasing goods or services through website, or it is an offer or invitation to offer. So there is a difference between two things. One is the offer and invitation to offer. Generally what happen is, when we purchase the things from online platform or a digital platform, generally we saw there are certain displays of goods and services. So we are selecting those services. So that means here the seller is not offering, but he is giving invitation to offer. So once the consumer who is selecting the article and putting that in the wish list, we can say a cart, which is given by the website, host website. So that means the seller is giving invitation to offer, and now the person who is consuming, he is making an offer. That means he or she is making an offer to purchase that particular good. So they are mainly whatever we saw in the auction and retail sites, these are not an offer, but these are invitation to offer. Now, the next term is acceptance. Now, once it is okay that offer is essential element of any contract, like one has to make the proposal, but that proposal has to be accepted. That is, acceptance of the offer is very essential for the conclusion of any contract. So, when we talk about the online, for example, so we are saying no, it's an offer is now made by the consumer. But when you are putting in the purchase list or you are putting it in your cart for purchasing, so it has to be accepted by the seller. So it could be, online platform, if we look into it, could be through emails, it could be in the form of, online agreement, or maybe there could be some terms and conditions, or acceptance is given through website itself. So when the order is booked and the payment is made, we can say that they have accepted the your offer to purchase that particular good or to hire some services. That means acceptance has been given. So acceptance is communicated. The third very essential of the contract is, there should be, lawful consideration. Now, when we talk about lawful consideration, what it means? That means if I am doing something or if I am purchasing, that has to be for some consideration. So consideration should always be legal. It should be complete also. It should not be, it should be legally lawful consideration, we can say. It should be maybe for money, for example, if a person is selling the goods, he is selling that for the money. So it is a lawful consideration because I am selling goods, A is selling goods to B for a lawful consideration, which is a money of say 20 rupees or 100 rupees. So that is a lawful money, that which consideration for which the person will keep its promise or fulfill its proposal. Fourth essential element is the lawful object. So whenever we have a contract, so it should be always be a lawful object, because a contract cannot be for any invalid reasons, or it should not be for example, if we went to the website and the retailers there may be selling arms, for example, and he's selling arms which is not legally allowed. So this is not a valid contract. So for a valid contract, there should be a lawful consideration and lawful object. For example, if a person is not only in the context of sometimes the marriage agreements, so these type of things are not always considered as a valid contracts. These are void contracts. But in case of online platform, if somebody is selling narcotic drugs, that's an illegal. So this is not a valid contract. So it is very important that there should be offer, acceptance, lawful object, and lawful consideration. Then comes the competency of the parties. Now, who is competent to enter into contract? Now, it's basically person should be of major, should be of sound mind and capable of knowing things, determining the things what he is doing. So, but when we talk about, e-contracts, it's become very, sometimes difficult to ascertain what would be, age of the person. So, it can be done through, they can have a separate age agreements that yes, the person, you are of this age, then only you can further visit to that particular website. So, it could be determined in many ways. There could be agreements in which the person has to specify the age. But for the validity of any contract, the person should be major and has capacity to contract, which is sometimes becomes very difficult in ascertaining the online contracts, because there should be proper rules framed in regarding to that. There should be certainty and possibility of legal performance. So that means a contract should be certain. It should be on certain conditions which is possible to do. There should not be any vague terms in the contract which is not possible to ascertain. If a person is saying I can do that or this, which is not possible, so then this contract becomes void, because when there are the conditions which cannot be justified or which cannot be done, then that contract is not valid. So it must have certain proper conditions and terms which is certain and which can be done. The last one is free consent. Now, when we talk about free consent, what it means? That means that when the two persons are entering into a contract, they should enter with their free consent. That means they are agreeing to Same thing in a same manner. We says consensus ad idiom. That means both of the minds came to the conclusion, yes, they are agreeing to that particular thing. That means there should not be any mistake, misrepresentation, or it should not be a fake contract. So they should come into the conclusion, or both should agree, both the parties A and B, they should agree with the free consent. There should not be undue influence or coercion. That means they are agreeing to same terms in a similar manner. Their understanding of that contract is same, and there is no fraud, misrepresentation, or undue influence in that. Now, e-contract, if we have to define, how will we define that? Now, e-contract, we can say, is any kind of contract which is formed in the course of e-commerce by the interaction of two or more individuals using electronic means. So, such as, it could be an email, it could be interaction of an individual with an electronic agent, or there could be two electronic agents. There is interaction between at least two, we can say, electronic agents. So, they are programmed to recognize the existence of the contract. Now, online contract is also, formed over the internet, where an offer is made and an acceptance is received. So, in both in online contracts or otherwise, that means there should be an offer and acceptance. The offer could be made by a seller or a service provider using maybe emails or a website, and the buyer on a receipt of an offer places an order, and the seller confirms the receipt of the order. But here, actually, generally in all the online website, this is an offer of invitation. There is an invitation to offer. So, when the person selects that goods or services, it offers to purchase that good. So, that means the e-consumer now here becomes important, and now they are offering. Because there are so many retail and auction sites which, they give number of products, and there is also bidding sometimes, you can see. So, that is merely an invitation to offer, not an offer by the website owner or a retailer. Now, if we talk about in general, basically e-contracts, they are similar to the conventional paper-based, we can say, the contracts, and where the vendor present their prices or display their goods, and potential buyers, they have to wait and see, and then they can purchase or make the payments. So actually, for the validity of contract, we should not say there is any difference, but it is similar to the conventional system. Now, when we talk about nature of e-contract, because when the contracts are formed, there is a need for a clear statement as to how offer and acceptance has to be made. When we talk about the online contracts, how it is communicated. So there are various rules when we talk about the contracts in physical world. Maybe a email communication rule, what could be that, or a postal rule where we say once the offer is given, before acceptance it could be revoked. So, when we talk about the nature of online contracts, so it is very important to see there are certain, international scenario also if we look into. So, there is a United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, which is UN-CITRAL Model Law on Electronic Commerce, which is adopted by General Assembly in the year 1997. For the first time, it articulated the nature of the online contract, and it tries to provide mechanisms in terms of contract formation and validity, how the contracts are formed and how they are valid. So basically, if we look into the first, which we can say is the first convention, that is UN-CITRAL Model Law. Now it provides that the information shall not be denied legal validity or legal effectiveness or enforceability, because it on the ground that it is the data, it is done electronically, or it is in the form of data messages. So it basically UNICITRAL Model Law, it provides legal validity and sanctity to the contracts which were made through the online platform. If we look into the Information Communication Technology Act, which provides legal recognition to the electronic records and basically give functional equivalence to the paper-based work to the electronic work. So Information Technology Act provides for a basic legal framework which gives sanctity to the electronic records or digital signatures. It also provides for how the electronic records should be retained, maybe by a person, organizations, or government agencies, and how the digital signatures can be used while contract formation. or it's not only digital signatures but electronic signature, which includes digital signature which is issued by our certifying authorities. And there is also a controller who looks into all the important aspects of how the its digital signature is issued, or who are the certifying authorities. So IT Act provides overall framework of with the objective to provide legal recognition to the electronic records. So if we look into, it also, IT Act also defines who is, parties to the contract. In a way, it provides for the process of communication when the offer is given or acceptance is received. So there is a process of communication which is involved. Now this process of communication needs three persons. One is the originator, the second person is intermediary, and the third person is the receiver, who is addressee, we can say. One is the originator, which means a person who sends, generate, stores or transmits any electronic message, or causes any electronic message to be generated, stored or transmitted to any other person, but does not include an intermediary. So it says, it is excluding intermediary. Why? Because intermediary, as the name suggests, is a person in between. So in communication process which is taking place online, there are three parties. One is the originator, in between comes the intermediary, and in the third part is the addressee. So originator is the person who wants to send something, or who has generated certain message and then transmit that message to the addressee. So his message is for the addressee, but how it is communicating? Through intermediary, which could be many internet service providers. So how do we define the intermediary? The intermediary is with respect to any particular electronic message, means any person who on behalf of another person receives, stores or transmits that message, or provide any service with respect to that message. So what is the role of intermediary? It is fixed role. So what it is doing is, whatever the message may be encrypted, which is the encrypted message basically, whatever the message which is received by the intermediary, it can store, it can then it has to transmit to the addressee. So basically here the addressee is a person who is, as per the originator, has to receive that particular message. So I will define, or how the IT Act has defined the addressee, that it means a person who is, is intended by the originator to receive the electronic record, but does not include the intermediary. So intermediary is excluded from originator as well as addressee also, because it is only playing the mid role. That means it is providing services to the A person and a B person, originator and addressee, who are entering into a contract. So intermediary is only playing a mediocre role. So types of contract, if we look into, there is e-tendering and procurement. Now what is procurement? Is, it refers to hiring or obtaining the goods or services through an e-platform. Under e-procurement, services or goods are hired or purchased via a web portal. So that means the goods and services are hired through web portal. But if we talk about tender, it is circulated on a website. It may be for some certain services they are asking for, and in what quantity it should be there. And it also provides for a tentative price, and then they ask for the bidding, and they invite the online bidding, which is open and accessible to on a particular day and time. So in e-tendering, what happen is, whenever they are receiving the lowest bid, and then that's how the that particular contract is given to the who is the lowest bidder, or who has evaluated the work could be done in an easy manner. So it is a easy way of communication, or we can say it's a very transparent way where the communications can be done, or contracts can be concluded fully electronically, and where the two person they can seal through digital signatures. So one of the form is we have discussed e-tender and procurement, but then there comes an EDI, electronic data exchange. So these data interchange contracts is basically between two organizations. So what happen in EDI is data and information is moved directly from, it is transmitted from one organization's computer to the other computer of another organization. So basically they are using this data, maybe in many ways, many documents are used for, data by transferred through this data interchange contract. Maybe it relates to, maybe it could be vouchers, it could be finance bills. So however, what they can do is, while they are doing EDI, they can fix certain standards and know what has to be communicated, or what has to be sent to the another organization. So they could build certain inbuilt standards where not the whole information would be sent to the another computer of another organization, but only the information which is required to be transferred. So it is commonly used between the organization or between the two, subsidiaries also. Generally, they use the EDI contracts. Now, when we talk about access contract, basically it means providing a technical facility to consumer to access the internet, to access the, it's not only accessing the internet, the consumer needs to enter into, agreement with the internet service provider or a person who is offering the internet services. So it is basically facilitation of the consumer to provide that yes, this information will be provided. Then click wrap agreements, or we look into a click wrap contracts or a web wrap contracts, that has become very common nowadays. Now if we look into click wrap contracts, it is also called click through contract or an agreement. It's basically, we can say, click wrap license also, you can use the term. It is to take it or leave it contract. Either you take it or leave it. If you have to use any services which is given by any particular organization, then there is no negotiating chip in between that. Either you have to agree or you don't have to agree. It could also take certain form. There might be a click button which says I agree, or there may be a button which specifies some other word, and then you have to click on that button. Then only you can avail the further services of that website. Now, when we talk about web wrap agreements, that are also, generally these are inbuilt in when you are downloading certain software. So at that time, the web wrap contracts licenses have been used. They have certain terms and conditions. Once you download the software or use that software, that means you are abide by those terms and conditions which is specified in the license agreement. But it depends upon for which particular goods or services it is being there. So an agreement is to abide by the terms of a license agreement, which is signified by downloading the software and data or a content to which the license agreement basically applies. And it is also known as, sometimes we also call it as a browse wrap agreement, or an agreement that requires a party to that requires a party to manifest its assent by hitting a button or a clicking. It also on-screen buttons are also there. So click wrap and web wrap, they are very quite common. When we are downloading a software, we generally say, okay, we agree to the terms and condition, even though we don't bother to sometimes look into those terms and condition. So I think we should always go to the privacy statements and terms and conditions before we are downloading the goods or services. But generally we don't focus on our privacy or something, and we generally accept it because we want to use that services, because there is no negotiation in that. Either you have to use that services, then you have to agree to their terms and conditions, or otherwise you have to cancel that, and you don't need to, you can't download that software, you can't use further that website. So we have seen that legal framework which is governing this e-contract is basically the Indian Contract Act, which defines offer acceptance and rules for revocation of offer and acceptance. What are the consequences in case of breach of contracts? What is the lawful consideration? It gives certain good examples and illustrations how the contract is formed. What are the valid contract? Which one is the void contract? So Indian Contract Act governs that. And Information Technology Act basically governs it gives legal recognition to the electronic records, and also provides for the process of communication through through originator, intermediary to the addressee. So Indian Evidence Act is also very important, which now provides for the definition that documents which are in electronic form, they can be admissible in evidence, and there is no need to have any other document in original form. If the document is in electronic form, it is still useful. Then the Consumer Protection Act 2019 is very important. So far the remedies are concerned. So any e-consumer or now the Consumer Protection Act defines e-commerce and any services which the person avails through online platform. So they can have a remedy under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. So far, so we have discussed various forms of online contract, and I hope so that in this session we have learned about various natures of e-contract and forms of e-contract, and we are looking forward for next time we can more discuss specifically upon the process of communication and on validity of the e-contracts, how they are valid and legally enforceable under the Information Technology Act. Thank you.